Hi guys, so this week Delphi, Fraser and I are going to analyse the 1989 film Dead Calm. So access to Dead Calm is almost exclusively online from what I could find. I suppose there would have been DVDs, sales of it in the past, but now seeing as it is 30 years on from its original release, obviously isn't quite as prevalent. Many of the options for accessing the film I have listed here, so mainly streaming and movie services like Amazon and Google Play, and even Netflix in some certain countries. I did look into hard copy disc versions, but like I said earlier, it was hard to find those, and obviously with DVD sales being largely out of demand, major retailers that still do, like JB Hi-Fi for instance, did not have it. The director shown here was Phillip Noyce, so I just thought I would give you some context surrounding him. So he is an Australian director born in 1950, whose career began in the 1970s, firstly directing largely independent and small budget films. However, Dead Calm in 1989 was his first big breakthrough, if you like, as following this Noyce went to Hollywood to work on bigger budget films with big stars. Some notable films being Patriot Games, The Bone Collector, and Salt, just to name a few. Big blockbusters like these allowed Noyce the chance to work with some of the biggest actors in Hollywood, such as Harrison Ford, Angelina Jolie, Denzel Washington, Michael Caine, and Meryl Streep. His illustrious career has led to many awards, with Dead Calm leading to a nomination for Best Director. Okay guys, so I thought I would now look into the themes for the movie. So the two predominant themes I believe we can attribute to the film are thriller and mystery. This conclusion can be drawn based on the very tension-building format of the soundtrack. The soundtrack featured a large amount of eerie music which helps to build suspense and add mystery to the plot. I then turned to the readings to gain a better understanding of what others thought about the movie's themes. And the Tilsky reading offered an interesting standpoint on the themes of the movie. Start quote, "Dead Calm heralded a new wave of films about serial killers, most likely in reaction to a rather bland decade." End quote. So this 2016 Tilsky reading attributes the serial killer theme, if you like, to the film. This was due to a decade lacking similar movies, in his opinion. But he also attributed the film to the thriller genre, describing it as a claustrophobic thriller, which based on the poster shown here is quite obvious. The line, "nowhere to hide," definitely supports this idea. Nicole Kidman's role in this film, which I will get into more depth about later, but her overall character frame was that of the female heroine, and these films were beginning to gain attention in the late 80s, like we saw last week with Meryl Streep as Lindy Chamberlain. The strong female characters were becoming more popular. This, however, was somewhat in vain due to the ending of Dead Calm. The ending originally was planned to end with Ray saving John, having got rid of Huey earlier. But, at the request of the distributor, Warner, the ending was changed. The restructured ending unfortunately reinforced patriarchal order with John saving Ray from Huey. I'll now hand you over to Fraser.
Dead Calm is a psychological thriller that reflects its genre while also providing a juxtaposition to releases of the same era. Notable conventions of the psychological thriller genre include the theme of mortality, which is evident from the early stages of the film. Dead Calm also contains a noted thriller staple in dramatic tension-building music, which is certainly evident in Graeme Revell's outstanding score. Another evident convention worth noting is the protagonist, Kidman, being more or less controlled by the antagonist, Huey, played by Billy Zane, while his character's motivations remain largely unknown. To support his quote, which you can read on this slide, Gerald Fitzgerald references 1980s films by Jonathan Demme, Adrian Lyne, and Ridley Scott alongside Dead Calm as examples of defying genre expectations. As Liam pointed out, whilst the ending of Dead Calm doesn't exactly shatter the damsel in distress stereotype, one obvious trend in these films is they are more oriented around female characters than big-budget films of the past. Ridley Scott's Aliens 1986 arguably features the most recognisable female protagonist in film history, and it is films like this and Dead Calm with Nicole Kidman that arguably represent a changing of the guard in the sci-fi action and psychological thriller genres, with female characters more prominent in their storylines than ever before. I'll now pass you back to Liam to talk about the notion of the Australian identity in the film.
So I also wanted to look into what makes this film Australian, and I think there are numerous points which we can pick out. The most obvious, of course, being that the director and lead actress were Australian, but also Sam Neill, despite being from New Zealand, is renowned for being in Australian movies. And also the location setting for the boat scenes above deck was shot off the Queensland coast at the Whitsunday Islands, which is a large Australian tourism spot, and this was done over a 14-week period. And lastly, we have to return to the notion of the dangerous Australian environment, as quoted here by scholar Mark Ryan. The harsh environment was a struggle throughout the film for both Ray and John, as I will soon show you an example of. And although Huey was arguably the biggest threat to both Ray and John, the impact of the harsh environment cannot go unnoticed, as it nearly killed John. And much like in other films we've looked at so far, the young white girl with red hair looked completely out of place in this dangerous environment. Very similar, of course, to the girls in Picnic at Hanging Rock, who did not belong in that harsh setting. So after you've seen this video, you'll be handed over to Delphi.
Dead Calm was produced by Australian producer Kennedy Miller under Warner Bros. Pictures. It was produced just at the end of the 10BA tax incentive era of the 1980s. This meant that much of the financing for the film when it began was through private organisations before government funding became the more dominant form of financing. When the film was released, it grossed up to $2.5 million at the Australian box office and $7.8 million in the US, ensuring it could make back the money spent throughout production. Although not a hugely successful thriller within Australia, the international ties and influence that the film established enabled enough capital to be generated as not to be viewed as a financial fail. Fraser will now talk about the relevant Australian film policies and go into detail about that 10BA tax incentive scheme.
In 1978 and then again in 1981, the Fraser government amended Australian tax law to enable screen producers to claim a tax deduction for eligible film productions. This subsidy was known as the 10BA tax incentive. According to the Australian government's screen agency Screen Australia, in the 8 years from 1980 to 1988, production budgets secured through 10BA totaled 92% of all Australian features produced in the period. I'll now hand you back to Delphi.
When drawing connections between how the film was marketed and the film itself, as an audience, it is clear to presume the film is in fact a thriller. We know this through the varying ways the film was marketed for both a national and international audience. The first way an audience is drawn to gain interest in an up-and-coming film is through the trailer. A trailer is a perfect way not only to promote, but build anticipation for a new film, and the trailer for Dead Calm did exactly that. The 1.28-minute clip opens onto the Warner Brothers logo, immediately establishing the production as a high-budget film, backed by Hollywood, and that it was, with a $10.4 million budget. The next notable aspect of the trailer is the low dramatic voiceover, with the opening line, "Alone on a sea of endless calm." This technique, typical of thriller trailers, entices the audience, creating suspense and narrates the film plot without giving too much away.
Alone on a sea of endless calm. It was easy to imagine they were the only two people on Earth. But into their perfect world, there came a stranger.
Stand up!
Tried to take her across the Pacific. On your own?
No, there were 6 of us. Yeah, this died 10 days ago.
I'm going on board.
fast asleep. He won't even know. God, you're pretty.
What about those people, huh? There wasn't any food poisoning, was there?
No way! Lost your soul!
You think I'm making this up?
No, I don't.
You sound so much like them, Ray! It's scary!
Dead Calm. A voyage into fear. From the makers of The Road Warrior and Mad Max.
Another marketing strategy to gain consumer interest was the promotional theatrical poster used for advertising and in cinemas. The Dead Calm poster shown here is simple but effective. Most importantly, it draws similarities to other thriller film posters at the time, showing a red calm sea symbolising the red of blood and the calm aspect in the title, merging into half of Nicole Kidman's gripping face, the heroine of the film, all set behind punchy white font stating "High seas, deep terror, try to stay calm," which is essentially Nicole's aim throughout the film. By utilising similar theme, colours and formatting like the Hollywood thriller posters at the time, the marketing of the film is more effective. As Jonathan Gray states in Show Sold Separately, our consumption choices are motivated by previous consumption, suggesting that as an audience, we are drawn to what we already know and consume, and if we already consume well-known thrillers, we would be more inclined to pay to see this one. Like director Phillip Noyce, Nicole Kidman also rose to the Hollywood limelight after starring in Dead Calm. As a new young Aussie talent, she possessed both the beauty and skill as a young actress. This naturally meant that she was the face of many of the promotional photo shoots and focus within promotional interviews. Visually, Kidman's dyed red hair for the role also elevated her status as a noticeable actress and was used as a marketing tool within these photo shoots seen here. Because Kidman was not yet an established actress at the time, it is easy to presume when looking from an analytic lens that Kidman's youth, beauty and body are in fact being used as an object of promotion rather than the subject of an art form. Despite being a thriller about murder, Kidman's capability and heroism in the film, the default approach to marketing the film is through this aspect, and although questionable, it cannot be denied that this form of promotion is successful and has been for many years. Although Kidman does secure her position as an actress cast for her talent, not just beauty as evident within the film. As an additional marketing strategy, Phillip Noyce participated in an interview with Cinema Papers magazine detailing what to expect in the up-and-coming film with Kidman on the front cover. It is through these paratexts that the film aims to develop interest and anticipation for consumers to ideally generate enough capital to make the film profitable. Now, don't lose concentration yet, as Fraser will give you the rundown on the film's intended audience.
Phillip Noyce was given the rights to Dead Calm on the proviso that it wouldn't be made as a Hollywood film. This wasn't a negative for Noyce though, as he was able to incentivise the funding of the film with the tax incentives of the time, as well as attract local talent like Nicole Kidman and Sam Neill. But while Dead Calm features recognisable Australian characters and traits, like Neill's stoic Australian gentleman and the theme of the dangerous Australian environment, the film is still reminiscent of Hollywood. It features Hollywood conventions such as an outlined good and bad, a suspenseful ending, and a complete resolution. This notion of a complete resolution is an interesting one. As Liam touched on, Phillip Noyce originally had the film to end with Huey, Billy Zane's character, being put in a raft and sailed out to sea. But American test screenings responded poorly to this, and Warner Brothers, who were distributing the film in the United States, asked for it to be changed. The original ending was more reflective of Australian cinema at the time, as Australian films often didn't arrive at a clear resolution when the credits rolled. Dead Calm, while still being recognisably Australian, is also conscious of its American audience, and this, as well as its moderate box office success in both Australia and the US, illustrate its intended audiences. Susan Dermody and Elizabeth Jacker argued that the history of Australian cinema production between the mid-1970s and the mid-1980s was marked by patterns of tension between the roles of art and commerce. These patterns would contribute to the formation of the two-industry model initiated by Dermody and Jacker. Whilst Dead Calm fits the profile of an Industry 2 film, due to being more concerned with profits than nationalism and social messages. Deb Verhoeven has since pointed to a third industry. Industry 3 productions contain a combination of the recognisable traits of both Industry 1 and 2. Verhoeven described Industry 3 as films initiated by Australians wanting to work with large budgets, international resources, high-profile actors, and local content or personnel, and shooting either in Australia or offshore, or combining the two. Sounds familiar. I'll now hand you over to Liam.
So lastly, I will look into the awards the film received. Unfortunately for the notable names like the actors and the director, there were lots of nominations for Best Actress, Best Promising Actor, Best Director, Best Film, just to name a few. However, none of these resulted in wins. But the crew behind the scenes, however, was successful, namely at the AFI Awards in 1989, picking up awards in sound, cinematography, editing, and Best Original Music Score. I will now pass you back to Fraser.
The critical response to Dead Calm was mixed, with criticism of the screenplay a common occurrence, but the main cast's acting performances were considered to be a strong point. Desson Howe of the Washington Post said that Billy Zane injected unforgettable humanity and evil puckishness into his role, whilst fellow Washington Post critic Rita Kempley wrote of Nicole Kidman's character, "What's most fascinating about it is Ray's place in the pantheon of heroines, an Amazon for the 90s. 2 years after the release of Dead Calm, Metro magazine, a publication by Australian teachers of media, published a piece by Gerald Fitzgerald lamenting the treatment of the film by critics following its release. In this article, Fitzgerald wrote that, "To this writer, the film is not only a spectacular achievement, thematically it is arguably the most elaborate and challenging to emerge from Australian cinema. Spectacle and theme are woven together in ways that are quintessentially cinematic and characterise the best achievements of contemporary cinema. To some of these concerns, the following is directed, for Dead Calm deserved a lot better, or more, than it received from the first wave of reviews." Today, the film perhaps still hasn't garnered the kudos it deserved. Last year, in recognition of the film's 30th anniversary since release, film critic Travis Johnson posed the question of whether Dead Calm is the greatest Australian thriller ever made. To conclude his piece on flicks.com.au, Johnson said that, on release, the film did middling well with audiences, earning its money back but not much more. However, it did become a home video staple, and history attests to the effect it had on the career of its cast and director. Thanks for watching our presentation on Phillip Noyce's 1989 film Dead Calm. We hope you enjoyed it. Here are some questions for you to think about.